All right, so we just covered looping, but how do you guys actually work? Like, how do we put it into practice? Like, we're gonna build a calendar kind of meeting daily prep agent that kind of combines some similar actions we use for our lead enrichment agent, but also factor in some looping, so we can really figure out how to put it all together. So if you look at our screen over here, this is kind of a similar example. You can see what we're doing here is every morning we're waking up and looking at my calendar, and for it's going through each of my calendar events. And for each of my calendar events, we're looking at previous emails, we're enriching the person, all that good things, and just like pulling anything we have on that person. And from there, we have like a really enriched list of everyone who's attended the meeting, as well as like what the meeting's about, and we can generate a really crisp report and send myself an email and Slack. If we look at like a example output here too, just to give you guys an idea of what we're working towards, we have, for example, this day we had 5 meetings. We can see that kind of the end result meeting prep. We have all the attendees, a background, kind of in some context of what the meeting is. And this is actually super helpful, especially if you're meeting with external attendees, and you might have like more variance in your schedule day to day. So let's get started. So it's all opening up a new agent. By now you should know, I failed if you don't know how to get to the new agent editor. So I'm just gonna start right here in the flow editor. We're gonna trigger this. We're gonna use a time trigger. So whenever I want, like, think about like a calendar prep, I'm like, okay, I want this thing to come once a day. So I'm gonna click trigger, select trigger by Lindy in timer. I'm gonna do on recurring schedule. And the awesome part about like timers with Lindy is you can just define these time cadences in natural language. So I'm just gonna say every morning, Monday to Friday at 8 a.m. Gonna take a second to load, and there we go. Now the trigger will run at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday, starting at tomorrow. Great. Now let's perform an action. And what we're gonna do here is we wanna get all of my calendar events. So to get all of my calendar events, we're gonna click Google Calendar and View Events. View Events, if you haven't connected your calendar events, you should be ready to go. And then now on the right-hand side, like there's kind of some messy attributes, but we need to configure and figure out which ones we need to change from auto, which ones might need a little more specificity. Obviously there's freedom to take more control here and do what you want, but I'm just gonna show you my version. Calendar ID, it's like connected to my calendar already. Probably already has a calendar ID. I'm just using my default calendar. Can leave that on auto. Query, I don't know if I want to do a specific query. I want to grab all my meetings. It's like, but if you wanted to create a filter or let the agent know what it should look for different type of meetings, can totally change this into prompt mode and trick that out. Max results 250. I don't think I'm gonna have, if I ever have more than 250 meetings in my day, please help me. I think this is like more useful if like you're trying to pull calendars over a longer period of time instead of just a day. So we're just gonna leave this at that. I know I'm not gonna exceed that in my day. Now for filters, we have start date time and end date time. It's like, okay, I probably need to change this. I only want it to be 24 hours of granted when the day starts to ends on the day that I'm at. So I'm just gonna change these into prompt mode. So I'm gonna switch start date to prompt, and I'm going to change this to the beginning of today. Just a really simple prompt. And I wanna end at the end of today. Kind of funny, same prompt. And just like that, Lindy is gonna know like, hey, I already know what time it is in my context. I can use the beginning of the day and the end of the day and like automatically create a window for those 24 hours. And sorting doesn't really matter. So we should be good to go there. So this is where I actually wanna test this. Like I made a filter. I think this is gonna work, but it's like really great to test as you go. So I'm just gonna click the test button up here. And you can see we're triggering, it's gonna trigger the recurring schedule like now, just as by default. In view events, we don't have that many events today. We've been, newsflash, we've been filming a lot today. But you can see we have, film blocks. Yep, this looks correct. And we're all good. So the window, like actually if we look at the actual test, you can see the filter right here. Range start, yep, today at 0, 0, and it's gonna end at 11:59:59. So our simple prompts there worked. We're ready to go. All right, so now we've confirmed that our view events is working. Let's jump into a loop with what we just learned. So we're gonna click the plus right under this view events, and we're gonna wanna loop through for each calendar event. And so if we click on the loop, we can see those 4 specific configurations we were talking about earlier. And I know Lindy knows the context of all of my events, and so I could probably leave this at auto and odds are it would know that I want to loop the events and pick the right thing. But this is where it's like I always like to err on the side of caution and like let's be really specific. And that's maybe me just being a little bit OCD about my agents, but it's always best practice. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna change the items to loop through to prompt, and I'm just gonna say for each event in the following colon, it doesn't need to be exactly like this. And I'm gonna use my output reference of the output, which is each of the events. So now Lindy, this prompt is like for each of the event in the following, and it has some data about what this step just pulled, and it's gonna know, hey, like if there's 5 calendar events, I need to enter 5 loops, etc. For the max cycles, like if I'm gonna test this right now, I probably need 2 or 3. Like would recommend keeping this like 2 or 3, test it, and then scale it up. I'm pretty confident in this agent, so I'm just gonna keep it at like 100, just so I know it's not going to, it'll collect all the meetings for me at the end of the day. Max concurrent, I don't really care. I'm just gonna leave this on auto. If it processes all at the same time or one at a time, it doesn't really change the outcome for my meeting prep. So we can totally just leave this the same. Output, we're gonna come back to output at the end. I always like to do output at the end. As if you remember, whatever we put, we have to define what we put in the purple mesh and what we get out of the purple mesh. And like, there's only Lindy has memory of what's inside of that at all times. And it's like, so if you're outside of it, you need to be intentional about what you pass through. But it's really helpful to know what we're passing out of it after you actually build the agent inside of it. So what we're gonna do here is, first we're gonna add a step and just a condition. Just, hey, go down this path if the event does not have attendees. And we're gonna add another condition, go down this path if the event does have attendees. And something about loops that's super important too is like, best practice is you always want to like make sure that your paths lead to exit loop, because if it's not going to exit loop, Lindy might think you're still going to do something, and if there's no activity, eventually it'll close. But if say you have actions outside after your loop, you want to make sure things lead to this exit loop, or else it'll get stuck inside the loop, if that makes sense. But if the agent does have attendees, what we're actually going to do here is we're going to create another loop, because what I want to do is for each event, I also want to enrich each attendee. So I'm going to add another condition. Enter loop. Let's see here. Make sure we do this. Let me fix this guy. All right. Cut the last like 10 seconds, but we're going to keep rolling. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to add another loop. So if I go right here, I'm going to click plus, enter loop, because I want to loop through each of the attendees. So now we have a nested loop. You can nest through a lot of loops, so be careful. It does get expensive if you make some mistakes. So what we're going to do here is, now when I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, this is getting a little bit confusing. We have these enter loops, conditions. This is where naming gets really important. So I'm gonna start naming these for each calendar event. Then I'm gonna name this is there attendees, and then from there, I'm going to rename my conditions, attendees. Also, always great for these like binary condition paths. You always want to, if it's yes, no, always just toggle that guy on. And this one is no attendees. And I'm going to change this loop to for each attendee. So now we have a little bit more clarity. Okay, for each calendar event, if there's attendees, now for each attendee, then we're going to do a few things. So for each attendee, we have the email and the name, whatever is on kind of the Google Calendar invite. So we're going to do a couple things. Perform an action. First, I want to search previous emails with this person. So I'm going to use the search emails action. Like odds are we have, especially the external meeting, and we've like had some back and forth. Living in the email is like some context about what's happening in this meeting. So I'm going to search this emails. I'm just going to leave it on auto and honestly trust Lindy to do the job. Just give it some extra context. Then after I search emails, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to use search perplexity. And again, I'm honestly just going to leave it on auto. Like I think Lindy knows at this point. Let me drag this guy down. I think Lindy knows that we are going to just be trying to enrich and search this person. And off the emails, it probably has a better idea of what to search. Then after search perplexity, I'm going to use the search the internet action. And I'm going to explicitly instruct the agent to find LinkedIn URL. And then from here, I want to use the LinkedIn enrichment. So I'm going to add a plus and add a condition. Like at this point, maybe we have the LinkedIn URL, maybe we don't. So I'm going to go down this path if you found the valid LinkedIn URL. And what I'm going to do here is perform an action. LinkedIn profiles by URL. So if they found the valid LinkedIn URL, we're going to scrape their profile. Something that's like pretty important right here is we have this LinkedIn step. The LinkedIn step has two actions or two paths that come after it. If the search started and after results are available, we want to click on this, hit backspace or delete, and change the after results available to exit loop. And this is because in this case, if we did not change this, it would start searching for the person, exit the loop, and we actually would not return any results. So we want to make sure we're using the correct path right there. And then we want to go back to this condition. We want to add it so we had if they found the valid LinkedIn URL, but we also want to add what if they don't have the valid LinkedIn URL. Like so if you did not, see I'm just going to whisper flow because I can't type, you did not find the LinkedIn URL. Awesome. We're just going to drag this guy all the way down to exit loop. And we're going to make this look pretty here in just a second. But now we have all the bones. We have most of the bones here. We're also going to drag this exit loop guy down to this exit loop. We're going to click format, make it a little more pretty. And now let's clean up our labels a little bit. So I'm going to name this guy to LinkedIn URL just for clarity purposes. In this case we did, yes. Oh man. In this case we did, yes. In this case we did not, no. Alrighty, so we have LinkedIn URL, yes, no, exit the loop. Now what I want to do is I want to create a briefing of the event. And I'm just going to use an AI agent step here because it's a little more powerful. So what we're going to do here is after we've enriched all this information, say given all the information, if we actually have our objectives, we're going to have a pretty lightweight framework here because there are no tools. So just for the objective is, given all the information about the attendees that you have found, write a brief on the meeting with a couple bullet points on each attendee in their background. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just giving the agent some direction on what to do, and I trust it's going to figure out. And then its exit condition is your task is complete once you've generated the calendar event briefing. Great. And then from there, we can define the condition. So we need to, again, align the exit condition with what we just said here and define the condition. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste this guy right here. Okay, great. Now let me just format this guy, make it a little more pretty. So if we go from the top, we can see on a recurring schedule, we're going to view all my calendar events. We're going to loop through each calendar event. If there's an attendee, we're going to find any emails for the attendees. We're going to search Perplexity about them and the company. We're going to search the internet for the LinkedIn URL. We're going to scrape their LinkedIn profile. And for each attendee, we're going to come out of this with a lot of information about everyone who's in that meeting. And then after that, we're going to create a briefing. And then after that, we can exit the loop, and we have our whole briefing for the day. But now there's a pretty missing part that we've left into this point. Now that we've built the agent in here, we need to configure the exits to the loops. So let's start with the inside one. So in this case, our input is for each attendee, and we actually want to be a little more specific for items to loop through. So I'm going to prompt this one, say for each attendee in the calendar event. And so you can reference loops the same way you can reference other types of events. And in this case, whenever we're at this point, the loop is going to be the current calendar event. So this is actually referencing the current calendar event right here. And then when I want to output the full background on the individual. And then what this means is, like, say there's like 5 attendees. It's going to output a list of each of the 5 attendees' full background when you're ready to roll. Now that we have that, let's look at our outer loop. So we have for each event the following, then we're doing all this stuff. Then I want to exit the loop. In this case, this is the calendar event briefing. So I'm going to prompt the output to say, output the full briefing of the event, including background, or I'll say including including calendar details and personal enrichment information. I might change personal enrichment to personal background, just so that we're collecting all the information. So you can see, like, if you think of the flow information, just to like really hammer this home, is like on a recurring schedule, we're viewing the events, we're passing the event into this purple mesh. Then we're having, for each attendee, for each of these events, we're looking through all the attendees' information, and we're only outputting the enrichment information. So now this mesh has information of the current calendar event and all of the people information, and then we're going to output it again and then create a briefing. So after we exit this loop, we're going to do perform an action, send email. I'm going to send myself an email. So I'm just going to say prompt user's email. And this is where I could be a lot more specific with this body, but I'm just going to prompt and say the full daily briefing. And this will be probably pretty detailed. So I'm also going to send myself a Slack with like a much more concise version. So if I search send direct message, we're going to say, send direct message, user, the user's email, which I know is my email, same Lindy email as my Slack email. And I'm just going to say a hyper concise version of the daily briefing. And now what's going to happen here is every morning I'm going to get an email with a long briefing and a Slack with a brief briefing. And just to give you an idea of what this looks like from kind of earlier today, you can see here, I got this email. I'm using kind of showing you through the Lindy interface to open my email, but like all these like different film blocks and different meetings with information about the attendees and what I have to do. And then in Slack, I received a much more concise version. This is a pretty base case. You can really trick this out. But hopefully that was helpful and that loops make a little bit more sense. And excited to see what you guys build with this. Hopefully now you understand more about looping and you can see how this can be really powerful, and we're performing the same actions like on a much larger scale. And you can also, if you can build a nested loop like we did, I'm willing to bet you guys can figure out how to build one loop alone. But from here, we're going to start talking about, we're about to dive into some more of our most common agent use cases, like over 20 of them, and we're going to talk about how to optimize credits. Especially with looping, you might want to be mindful about credits just because it can escalate when you're running that many operations.